Cheers. Thank you. Okay. So today's topic for discussion is a view on Agile software engineering, and that's delivered by Nishant. I will introduce him to you all in a very quick um, time. Let's progress in terms of understanding what's the flow of today's 80, 90 minutes ahead of us. We're going to welcome you, and I'm going to tell you who are we in terms of APGI, I'll get the introduction done, and then I'll pass it on to our speaker Nishant, so that he can take us through the topic, and finally we'll have some Q and A's and closure to end the session for today. Who are we? APGI is the short form for Agile Practitioners Group of India. This was founded in 2015, and this is a non-profit group. Of course, this is supported by Scrum Alliance. Scrum Alliance supports us as a user group. We are their registered user group, which means we will get a lot of visibility outside India as well. And we've 3 annual conferences, one's coming up in 2021. And this is a volunteer-driven group with 1,000 plus members in our individual groups, meetup groups, etc. So this should possibly be our 32nd meetup so far. So which I think is a great thing. And we have our own channel. If you type Agile Practitioners Group of India on YouTube, Twitter, Insta, you will get the handle. And please subscribe so that you will be able to see the recording of this webinar as well as the previous ones. Everything is put on YouTube, so it kind of gives you, keeps you up to date. Okay, so that's who we are. We started in 2015, and this is a bunch of our energetic volunteers here on the right-hand side. If you see the picture, this was in 2019 when things were all right, when we were able to meet face to face and we were able to sit next to each other, which apparently is a dream now. So hopefully we should get out of this pandemic and get back to normal, so that 2021 we have good face-to-face conference again. And this is usually held in the city of Pune in Maharashtra, India. And we've slowly added our groups in Chennai, Bangalore, Mumbai, and Delhi as well. Okay, that's us. And a little about speaker. Of course, it's something which he's done massively well in all the technical aspects of Agile industry. However, this is my interpretation of what Nishant is. He's a technical architect at TCS, Tata Consulting Services. He's played multiple roles. He's still playing multiple roles like tech lead, architect, Agile DevOps consulting, etc. within his area and space. He is well versed with DevOps tools like Azure, Jenkins, GitHub, and those kind of things. And he is a technophile and kind of interested in understanding or getting into new ideas, innovation, and those kind of good side of things. So we'll definitely hear it from himself in a couple of minutes. Just a little social agreement between us today. Because we are on call, because we are virtual, it becomes important for us to have a working agreement. And when I say working agreement, your lines will be muted. Only reason being, it's a weekend and we all are with our families at home. So the speaker should not really be disturbed by the external noises, etc. So we'll mute all your lines. However, if you feel there is any question to be asked while speaker is covering a specific topic, please go ahead and unmute yourself and start asking your questions. Hopefully, the speaker also will look forward for your questions time and again, and he's tried to make this conversation or this talk very conversational. So hopefully that's taken care of. I'd leave it to you to enable your videos, understand the bandwidth and those kind of issues. So if you want to enable your videos, please go ahead. That's a good thing. If not, no worries. As long as you're mentally present 100%, that's great. We record this particular session and it will go up again on our YouTube channel. So please go ahead, visit our YouTube channel, subscribe to the channel so that you will get all the latest updates. You may also chat. We use the chat. I'll be the chat moderator this morning. In case you have any questions to be asked to Nishant, or anyway you want to give some extra information, something that he's covering that you have experienced, etc. Please put that in, because any experience is definitely a knowledge for the others. All right. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Nishant. Nishant, good morning, and stage is all yours.
Thank you, Surya sir. Thank you all for having me here. Good morning and good evening to all. And with that, I'll just share my screen. Let me know once you are able to see the screen.
Yep, this is me.
Thanks, Sundar. Yeah, so again, thanks a lot to APGI for having me here and talk about agile software engineering. A little bit about this topic, where we can control the complexity because of the various softwares what we developed and work on a day-to-day basis. With that, a little bit about myself, as Sri was also mentioning, having a 12 plus 12 plus years of IT experience, multiple roles which I have played, being from technical lead, architect, and Agile and DevOps consulting. The various software engineering practices, most of you might have heard about TDD, BDD. There is a acceptance test driven development, ATDD, DevOps, and domain driven design. Apart from that, the web applications. Uh, I have a vast experience working on a automation tools, which are like Azure DevOps, Jenkins, Git Subversion, or a distributed version control system, and the cloud platforms like AWS and Azure. I'm also a certified Scrum Master and a Safe Agilist. As Sri was mentioning, I'm a technophile and love to work on some innovative ideas or new technology. Love to try those out and create a value out of it. Uh, my hobbies in my free times are about reading books and trying out cooking, which is very popular these days in lockdown. So, with that, we'll go through the agenda of the topic today. We'll go through what is all about software engineering, then why we need this in today's world, importance of the various practices and how they are useful in the DevOps implementation, then importance of the concepts like TDD, BDD. We'll just touch upon these two and see how they fit together. And finally, talk about the simian army, and then we'll just do a small exercise with a software engineering maturity model just to understand how well your organization where you work they are matured. So what is software engineering? This we have been learning from our engineering days. There was a book which we used to have in our semesters, where we used to go through the software engineering concepts and their waterfall methods, where we used to discuss black box testing, white box testing. From there, as the agile has come across, the need of software engineering has increased. So this is basically an umbrella term under which the various practices which has come along and grouped together to give the core value of that agile. So in agile, most of the sessions conducted under APGI, you would have understood that how quickly we can generate the value out of the team, and then how the MVPs can be created within 2 sprints. That software engineering is more to put a control in terms of how the overall process of MVP can be made available to the end user and create a business value. Basically, whatever return of investment by applying this to production, while using the practices of modern practices of XP, technical practices, BDD, TDD, just to provide you enough support throughout these different tools and processes of software engineering to deliver the value quickly. And that's where you will see terms like DevOps, CI, CD, CM, continuous monitoring, and continuous feedback. All these are coming together, and that's where agile and software engineering, they come pretty close. And in order to make any agile delivery successful, you need to have a right practices in place so that you are not getting dragged behind because of your tools, processes, and the various technical aspects of your code base or the architecture. So basically, if you look at why we need software engineering today in today's world, right? So in the recent report of 14th annual state of agile report, which they published, what are the different engineering practices employed, right? And out of that, if you see the different practices which has been employed today, and few of them are listed here. So these practices are being followed in the organization today. So if you see unit testing, your coding standards, continuous integration, refactoring. So these are some of the keywords which need to be there today in order to achieve your agile deliveries on time. Still, you are able to uh, do that 2 week sprint. How many of times you would have seen that something is getting spilled over because of your technical depth, or because of you are not able to complete of your testing or development because of environment availability, because of certain challenges. So all those aspects, if you look at, you will get into the zone where you will feel a support of all these things. The major part of agile is to evolve with time. As soon as the requirement comes, you see the trend is changing, and that's where you bring the agility. So that means you need to have enough ecosystem around you or your code base or your team, so that it helps you to go through and address those evolving architectural pattern, architectural changes, or a demand from a customer to deliver quickly without bring down your production environment, or without bringing down your services to the user. And this is where it will come in picture, that these standards are much needed. For example, if you are making one change today and then you put in that in live, right, and then you will face a issue with that particular piece of software which we have put. Now you would like to go and refactor it. If you don't have somebody around you to tell it that okay, that particular thing, whatever you are changing, is going to break something else. That's what is all these standards are about. So your unit testing, as soon as you change something, there is somebody sitting in your code itself validating that whatever you are changing is going to break something else. It will upfront tell you. So earlier in like 10 15 years back, if we look at this, there was a review comments or a peer review or a TQA review, that kind of words we used to have. They are also human being, and things evolve with the time. So if you look at that, that's where unit testing, your continuous integration, refactoring, continuous delivery, automation, acceptance testing, this creates that kind of ecosystem around you, so that as a agile team, you are able to be self dependent and can create that whole process of creating that value to the customer within that short span of time of 2 weeks or of 3 weeks, based on the agile framework you follow, right? So again, if you look at the different view, how a success of an individual agile projects is measured today from the same report of annual state of agile report, these are the various parameters through which the agile software engineering or a business value which agile projects deliver. So how much business values are delivered, which is around lies around 46%, because that's what at the end of day, whether you follow waterfall or you follow agile or six sigma or anything, this is all about what business value you are going to deliver. At the same time, the customer and user satisfaction, your velocity, budget versus actual cost. So some of these points, if you pinpoint, all relates to the business value created. In order to do so, obviously the agile aspects, your people, process, all those aspects comes in mind. Apart from that, you also need the automation or a software engineering practices to be around yourself to help you going through that particular journey. In order to achieve the business value, you need to have that validation whether the business value is what being asked is being delivered in a more efficient and timely way. You need to have that customer and user satisfaction. How you measure that on a timely way, that is very important, whether they are getting the same customer experience how they were getting it, or that is getting deteriorated, or that is getting better with time. So all those measurement is needed, and that feedback need to be very quick to the team. Your velocity, that is a most of the scrum master or the agile coaches in this group will agree to that. That is important thing, that is a parameter which tells whether you are able to achieve your outcomes within the sprint teams, one of the parameter, and that's what this reports also shows. So velocity, as I was talking about, your spilling over of the stories into next sprint, not able to complete so because of the some environment or architectural pattern issues. So this is where your software engineering will come and automate your all those tasks. One of the principle we talk about is being lean, right? So reduce that waste. So how you are going to focus on something to automate so that you can reduce all those wastage and just focus on the right thing to deliver the MVPs. And these ecosystem of your software engineering practices around your team will help you to achieve that. So with that, if you look at the different parameters on why actually the agile as a process, if you think is needed, software engineering practices is needed. Basically, if you look at the time uh, earlier in waterfall and compared to agile, it was difficult to understand and change system at that time, because you used to create something for 6 months and then you get into the delivery of it, and obviously by that time the requirement would have changed, environments would have changed, need would have changed. So that's where it is getting into a problem. Now if you look at the some of the interesting things about how many bugs, if you look at how much bugs you create in agile and waterfall, that could give you at least some of the idea if you are going into that particular migration process. If the software engineering practices are in place, you will be able to catch those errors upfront. So if you talk about the overall process of maintenance, so people might think about the agile projects are costly or not costly, that's a further debate to it, right? But overall, if you see in a long run, agile gives you that flexibility to know about the errors or the integration errors upfront within your sprint environment. And technologies like containers, your deployment pipelines are making these easier day by day, because if things works in your machine or a dev environment or sys environment, that will work in production as well. So those things are coming along with all these software engineering practices, which makes life easier. How many times in waterfall you would have missed that release date, or not having those software engineering practices around, even if you are implementing agile, but how many times you would have decided okay, I'll be able to go in this release but not able to meet it, so you might have to postpone it. Also there is a concept of feature toggles. How many times you would have thought about implementing that, and just with a toggle you can still make it to the release for rest of the feature. Your one feature is not blocking the whole MVP as such. Then difficult releasing and too many architectural dependencies. As I was talking about, agile is more towards evolving your architecture. The need of the customers are changing, the technology is changing day by day. But if you are creating a monolithic architecture, you need to focus with time on how to enable that particular architectural patterns with time going forward. And that's where these pattern or software engineering patterns should not be a difficulty for you at all. Now changes into one part of a system causes another part to fail. And that is a interesting bit, because earlier there was a human being who used to review it, or there are certain patterns who used to review it. Now if I have been given one piece of code, I look at the various standards, various patterns, design patterns, and that's it. But if that particular bit is going to impact something else which I'm not reviewing at all, because the system is like 30,000 or 3,000 line of code, I'm not getting time to get into each of those minute details and then review it. Otherwise it will take one pull request will take like 1 week to review it, and that's not what agile is. So we need to create that automation around all these process, so that this particular change is going to break the other change into some other system. So that whole testing is needed around this, and that's where you would need a certain practices which we call agile software engineering practices around you to enable it. With that, let's have a quick look at what is hot. So it's called hot scale. It's a perspective of agile software engineering, where the human perspective talks about your cognitive and social aspects of it. That's where your teammate, customer, managements, all those interactions, your learning and interpersonal skills comes in picture. When you talk about organizational perspective, which is O in this, which includes your managerial and cultural aspect and refers to the workspace and issues that extends beyond your team. That's where you would have heard about distributed agile. You would have heard about how a different team, different technology background, different process background, they come together and then work for driving that MVP and making that available for the end user, while still staying in the business. And then the T is the technological aspect, which includes the practical and technical aspect and refer to low level coding or code related or environment related or architecture related issues. And that's where this is called hot scale. And with that, let's do a small exercise, just to see whether you are able to get into the understanding of this hot scale, what it is all about. So on the left hand side, you can see the whole team, sort releases, time estimation, measures, customer collaboration, test driven development, pair programming, and refactoring. So we can open a line for probably 2-3 minutes to see which one of these will fall into which category of hot scale, whether it is human, organizational, or technology. Whole team, by mean of that, it's the whole Scrum team, where your the developer, tester, product owners, they are part of that. Sort releases is more towards how quickly you can deliver your releases, you are able to deliver that softwares. Your estimation is where it is related to your how well you are able to estimate it, whether you are able to articulate those changes in a right way, putting the right sizing to it. Your measures, whether you are able to articulate those measures on the work needed on that particular stories. Then customer collaboration is more towards how your team understand that customer business objectives and able to deliver it. Test driven development is more about how you able to write the unit tests around your code bases and making that easy for refactoring later. Pair programming is more about collaboration, where you are in your team member talking to each other and helping to understand and deliver that particular concept within the sprint. Refactoring is about like further modifying your code base, evolving with the design, whether we can do more for less, that kind of approach. So with that, we'll open the chat and just go through it. If you have some views, which one of these can fall into which category, please. Sri, can we open the,
Yeah,
if anybody would like?
yeah, so chat remains open anyways. If anybody wants to unmute your line and possibly go through the list from top to bottom, that will also be good. Otherwise, if you want us to call out the left-hand side parameters, we can call that out while you can type whether it's H, O, or T. That's also okay. So it is totally up to the team how we want to organize this. Do you want to unmute your lines and one of you just go through how what whole team lies under, shortly releases lies under, etc. let's make it conversational, guys. Otherwise, it's going to be just a monologue, either from Nishant or myself. So
Sheree,
please
is it
unmute your
worth
lines.
is it just worth calling one and then we just type in a chat what we all think,
Yeah,
which is
yeah,
HOOT? I think that's easier. If people not feeling comfortable speaking out, is probably better doing via chat.
that's
Not a
fine, G-Man.
problem. That's
Yeah,
fine as well. I'll take one example, like the whole team will fall probably into the human and organizational. If you talk about test-driven development, that might fall into technological aspect as well as I think, yeah, that's it. If you are talking about pair programming, that might fall into human as well as technological, both. So those are some of the hints. If you would like, anybody would like to try with rest of it, please.
so when you say time estimations, what do you all think? When you say time estimations, where does that fall under? H, O, or T, or mix of two or three areas? Can you type that in? Human. So Dreshan says human for time
I think
estimation.
time estimation will fall under all three, I think.
Nice.
Any other views? Human and technology. Okay, Prithvi, thank you. Okay, and how about measures? How about measures? So, Nishant, if I'm understanding right, measures means metrics. Are you hinting to that?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
KPIs and metrics. Okay,
KPIs and matrices.
okay. So, where do you guys
O
think that will fall under?
Organization.
ONT,
Okay, why is it
Point.
technology? Can you explain, Monica?
because how your infrastructure is set up, that might also come up with different kind of metrics. Not everything might be applicable everywhere.
Okay,
So it
okay.
depends on your technical maturity as well. That's what I feel.
Yeah. Yeah. So that could be one of the view again, as Monica you mentioned. It also depends on what kind of your measures are. So if you feel that yeah, you would like to involve the technology aspects of your environments and all, that certainly can fall. But that's one of the game which you can put and see around the different agile practices on one sheet like this and go through the hot scale. And this will also help you in terms of where to focus. So for
Mm-hmm.
example, if you feel that the pair programming is human as well as technology, and again understand it from the challenge today. For example, if you are able to not go through a continuous pair programming concept, through this you will be able to know that okay, it's a human and technological problem, and then you can attack each one of these separately through the various agile principle and processes, and then that will help you to enable this for your team. Yeah. So thank you all for participating in this, and with that we'll move into the next slide. As we were talking about these different practices, what is the purpose is to focus on a quality. When I say quality, it is about the quality what we deliver to the business user. So it is all about to the being lean and agile principle and practices, right? So be lean in terms of what you deliver, and also be agile in terms of the various principle it offers and the various practices we have to do. There is a term called like behavior driven development. We'll see with time. I think my colleague Sundar also covered that in last talk. We will go through the extreme programming concepts as well, and these are some of the different techniques what we use in terms of deliver that particular view terms of quality. We for check the code quality, and there are so many tools and techniques available through which you will be able to see the quality of a code which is getting delivered. And obviously that code quality need to be evolved with time, and need to focus, because the human part is keep on changing. The resources what is working on that thing can change tomorrow, right? So the code quality should be more like a standard from a team, which is enforced not by the human or driven by the humans. It should be driven by the system where it is working, and that is the ecosystem what we need to create. We also need to focus on the design patterns and practices, and there is a concept called agile modeling. which is a modeling of documenting your software system based on the best practices. And it's basically a collection of values, principle that can be applied to agile software development projects, which is uh, more flexible and than your traditional modeling methods, which is making it very fit for the today's fast changing environment. And it's a part of your agile software development kit. Basically, if you look at these different processes, where you will talk about like extreme programming or additional unified processes, RUP. Also, it's a part of your DAD, which is Disciplined Agile Delivery Framework, right? So if you look at these principles, the major part of this is about elements which is important to focus on a code quality or a quality of delivery or quality of MVPs, what you are putting to the end customer. The element of software engineering, if we talk about, there are two things to that. Talk about the principles and the practices. So in principle, you should always about think about the test first approach. Whatever you are doing, think about how you're going to test it. If you are thinking about making it available to the end customer, whether he is able to see the same thing what you would like to deliver him, think about that strategy first before you deliver it to him. That's where it will be helping you to measure it. uh, the KPIs for these deliveries are pretty important. So if you talk about any startups, then these things comes pretty well in mind, why you are going to deliver that, and whether whatever you would like to deliver, whether the customer is seeing it in a same way, have the requirement changed when you first articulated it. And that's where these are helpful. Now, uh, there is a support the continuous flow of value. So there is a very important term, flow of value, which right gets created from your agile teams. So what they create is minimum viable product, MVP. So that's the flow of value, but it should not stop only at the team level. It should be able to flow to the users for which it meant, to the end user through which you will be able to generate the return of investment. So we need to support that continuous flow through these software engineering practices. And in practice, what we use is your techniques like BDD, we use TDD, build quality with design, and also the code quality, which involves evolves with time, right? With that, we will look into the some of the practices what I was talking about. So write testable features, stories, and code. So unlike traditional way, it used to be more V-shaped, and as soon as from a lower ground to the higher level, when it is increases, that tend to be a V-shaped. Basically, the duration between write and test code at this point was more for a developer perspective, and that duration was pretty less. But when it goes to your for example, just put it across here for the testing, which is system testing or integration testing. This is where the gap was more, because the time itself, if you are not following agile or if you are not following it in a proper way, the gap increases for each one of these phases, and that's where it becomes more of a V-shaped. Now with this, we are talking about shift left, right? So we are talking about write code and test code. At that's where the your code practices, something like TDD comes in handy, and then that's where the quicker feedback comes in, and you will see a duration is pretty less here. And then you talk about your writing those stories, and some of these was covered earlier as well, where you do stories in terms of your BDD. Now how you test that, that's where your automation tools comes in picture. For example, your spec flow or JBehave. These are the some of the frameworks which helps you in automating those feature files and helping you to test those stories. You talk about those features, and then with that, a story and features, because a story might have a multiple scenarios into those features. So you can combine that and actually see a value here, and then you will have those validating through your lean UX team whether the right value is being delivered to the teams or not. And that's where those these two bits fall under your BDD, because this is more towards features, this is more towards your a step function or a scenarios within that, or a step function within that, and then you will be able to test it. So as you can see, the shift left approach helps us in going through each one of these section. Right now, let's focus on how we a feature looks like. So a feature is, for example, a cruise control with speed limit finder. The benefit hypothesis as a feature we would like to deliver is driver would like cruise control to obey speed limits, and measurement is 30% of a driver will use the speed limit finder when when on cruise control. That means this is a business requirement in a feature. When it comes to a developer or a team where they are working on a ground, they might not be able to relate exactly what is needed, and that's where a language which is unambiguous language or ubiquitous language is needed. And that's where your things like given, when, then comes in picture. So this is what will make more sense to a developer or a tester in an understanding. And but the final result what business would like to see is this is what they are investing in, and how that will be delivered through your BDD. So here you can see at top level you define hypothesis and validate how hypothesis that will happen at later stage. Was first you need to define, then you write a feature, and then this is the feature which will be tested through a automated software engineering practices and processes. Then you will be writing the stories, so you will further divide this and see how it can be uh, touched upon the various other scenarios of like edge cases and other things. You can add multiple statements into it to test it more thoroughly, and that's where your some of the best practices will be followed to break this further down. And then finally your test driven development. This is how a unit test will look like, where your different locations, a speed limit around that, and that you can test within that space. So these are some of the uh, breaks which you are going to see and put it, and how you are going to shift left with the approach like these and some practices what you follow. Now let's look at some of the DevOps practices in terms of the delivery. So if you look at this, we talk about agile development. So a lot of sessions might have happened where we talk about how we plan, how we code, and how we build. There is a continuous integration which takes you till the test phase, where you continuously bring that integration with your different ecosystem and systems to test it and validate if values are getting delivered. And this is where your sprint probably most of these stops here, or sometimes if the team is mature they might even go for the continuous delivery to the different environment. And the more up you go, that's where the DevOps comes. Basically this is the whole ecosystem. As you can see, this is where your collaboration is needed, because all your team members, and that's where your sprinting will be needed more often, and how you will be able to deliver within that team. Many times you would have heard about bringing one of the operations guys within the team that will enable DevOps, but this is more towards a culture and a practices what you follow. It's not about just the skill set which we need to focus on. It's about the various practices which need to be followed. And as and when we are talking about these different frameworks, obviously agile development is more towards what practices and processes which we follow within team. Continuous integration is more towards creating that ecosystem on a go, so that the team who are following those agile development methods are able to get help from them in order to get a quicker feedback. Continuous delivery is more towards delivering that into the environments where your different ecosystem in your organization will be able to validate and see if they are being deliver in the same way being asked for. A lot of these automation can be achieved in these areas where you can get a nice report out there rather than going into detail of it. And as I was talking about, reduce waste. So basically through automation you will be able to achieve some of it. Then finally the DevOps is all about deploying it to the your customer, then operating it, monitoring it, getting the quicker feedback right from there, and helping generating that value. So that was the continuous flow of the value. The value is getting generated in each of these phase, how they are being available to your end customer so that you get that return of investment right from your customer. That's where it comes important. Now let's see the another view how the continuous flow of value works. So you will start the things with a planning, right? You get a requirement or a business statement and see how you're gonna deliver it. Planning is important part of it, and that's where you will see what is a functional planning, operational planning. Then you get into the coding part through your agile teams within the sprints. You look at the different source code repository. This is more towards DevOps practices. So I'll not get into much into the agile part of it, how we deliver, but look at the end-to-end practices as a whole. So you will be able to see the source code repository, different practices, what you follow about the branching, your dependency management onto the different releases, different branches, different products, what you have, your evolving architectural patterns, and then you will have distributed version control system that will certainly help in working in the distributed way like today to generate that particular value. Then you need to have that CI server through which you will be able to integrate whatever is being coded, maybe from a multiple team. Sometimes you will be getting into a scrum of a scrum, and they each are getting delivering that particular value. You need to integrate them together and validate if they together generate the value which we have expected. So you will be able to compile, unit test, do the analysis of their code in terms of whether they are the good quality code, package them together, and then finally put that into a test suite. So basically through your automation, integration, UI, performance, security, all this testing can be achieved through your pipeline. And that's where you will be able to test it in a more automated way. Then you will be able to release it, basically create that artifact repository where you keep the different versions of the code which you are going to deliver and deploy it. Again, the deployment orchestration is required. Infrastructure, application, and configuration, all those comes under that. That means you would have heard about infrastructure as code. Even it can live all as a part of one pipeline. You will be able to trigger that, create the infrastructure on the fly, deploy the code there, test it, and then deliver the results. So these all can be automated. So in actual true DevOps environment, right from code to the production, they are all as a part of one pipeline. In the deployment, you might have different deployment techniques. We have heard about like blue green, or you would have a canary based deployment where you roll out in a weightage manner to the users, and finally you operate, see the different monitoring, alerting, notification. All these bottom parts is mainly for your quick feedback. So through all these techniques, the point is each one of these will result into the user feedback and quick allow them to quickly take those actions in order to improve or implement something which is able to help them in the longer. Yeah. Now let's touch upon, as we were seeing some of the practices which is about BDD. So behavior driven development. It's basically aspect of a different techniques or a human beings which comes from a different cognitive diversity and their thinking perspectives. So if you look at your customer or developer or tester, so how many times you would have wore a different hat? It is sometimes becomes tricky that whether I am able to think from a tester perspective or I am able to think from a customer perspective. That's where a term called the triad or a three amigos comes in picture, where you bring those three groups or a set of people together to talk about a business statement or a problem. Here the customer representative might be a BA and or a technical BA who will be able to bridge that particular gap between your customer and the developer and tester to articulate those problem statement. So customer thinking is more from a viability or desirable outcome, whether it is there. A developer is more thinking towards whether it's technically feasible to implement it or not, or it is about whether architecture is allowing that to go and implement this particular feature. Our technology set is whether will be able to deliver that value or it will create a bad user experience. Tester will be more thinking from a different exceptions, various edge cases, boundary conditions. So with that three different angles, you are going to attack that problem and coming up with the right choice of techniques in there, right? So uh, basically you are going to see the different aspects of that particular business problem, and then with that all those discussion points which are going to come, they are being written into the ubiquitous language or basically unambiguous language, right? So if you look at what we are talking about is here, behavior is first described in very general terms, and it can be ambiguous first, right? Because the statement what you have seen before talking about the speed limits, that can be just be a statement that okay, I would like to deliver that, and then we can go through that discussion of three amigos and put those examples in front. What if the user will do this? What if the user doesn't click that button? What if he clicks 2 times or 3 times? What should happen? All those discussions will trigger that outcomes, basically the different scenarios within that. So for example, here we are talking about, as a driver, I want vehicle to determine the speed limit and set the speed to that limit so that I do not have to pay attention to the speed limits. Acceptance criteria for this is car maintains speed close to a speed limit but not above it, right? So these are some of the things which might come. So for example, the statement here might be a given a speed limit of 50 mph when the car drives, then the car speed should be between 49 and 50 mph. Okay, so it clearly says that between 49 and 50 mph, it should not exceed beyond that. This could be one of the example. You can come up with more cases like that, but this is from where you will be getting into uh, ambiguous to unambiguous kind of statements and creating more contextualized kind of a statement for the agile teams to understand and deliver that particular value. And that's how it all gets mapped. With the next slide, we'll basically look into the BDD principle and practices. So as we were talking about ambiguity, right? So in here, the business's goal perspective, they are pretty clear that what they would like to achieve, but how they would like to achieve is going to break further, which is dependent on lot many things. So they are going to write the different features. So you are going to build those features which can contribute only to that business goals, and this is where you are going to further simplify it by putting the examples around it. Like you would have seen some 49 to 50, they might say that okay, what if the speed breaker comes? All those scenario can be discussed in three amigos, and then you can come up with the specific use cases. Finally, the beauty of BDD is it can be automated. It can be created as an executable specification which can live with your code. So even if skills move, your team members move, the person who is going to validate those requirements or a behavior of an application is sitting with your code. So these can be executable, which will guide the development and testing team. So once you will have there, you can automate it and refer as many time on a daily basis to see something else if I have put it, whether that has broken that behavior. So when we talk about the behavior driven development, this is mainly towards your how you gonna achieve that business goal and write it and keep it documented. It's a living documentation. It helps your testers, business analysts, users on the code that has been built. It's a real-time progress report. Basically, if you add further features to it, you need to make sure that something else is not broken. Otherwise, you will go and revisit it, right? Uh, it is also a technical documentation because, as I mentioned, it's the executable specification lives within your code. You will be able to map it to the actual code implementation to it. It also provides you a automated validation. You can have a automated regression or a functional testing which comes free. Basically, you can run this as a part of your pipeline and get the feedback quickly. And then there is a working feature, which is that's where the business value lies. And out of that you can always generate the low level specification, and behind of that you will have your application code which is running. So as a principal, you are going to put these practices around and then deliver that particular business goal. And that's the beauty of having these executable features. And there are so many tools and technique which are out there. The important debate with my experience which I have seen is being on the technology set of being it Java or .NET or a more front end mobile technologies, which makes it easier because that's where the traceability is easily available. Means you have a tools like a specflow, JBehave, JUnit, NUnit, XUnit. These are the different things which are available out there, which gives you that flexibility to map those specification into your actual code. Problem comes with your systems, legacy systems, where that traceability is not developed. But I'm sure, and this I have been telling since long, one day that might come as well, that traceability will be provided where you will be able to make that executable specifications, but nothing is stopping you to articulate that problem into the ubiquitous language or unambiguous language, which is of given, when, and then, because that can still live with your code. People will be able to understand that how and what we are trying to do to achieve that business goal at the end of day. Now let's look at the behavior driven development features. So we talk about stories, features. So here we are talking about the different language which we use behind the scenes. So these are all the various keywords which are out there. So given, you can give context and then you can append it with further context to it. When is more about when you perform certain action or a event on top of that. Means on a given context you perform certain further actions to it, and then certain more actions to it. Then what is the outcome, what is the final outcome, and then what all other outcomes you are expecting. As you add more and it becomes more complex. So what we suggest as a practice, keep it to the minimum. See if you are able to achieve with the minimum, and then you can write multiple scenarios. So feature is more towards it is able to get you that particular business problem, a unit of business problem solving. But with the different scenarios, you can basically cover the different edge cases or a boundary cases around that particular business goal, what it would like to achieve. With that, let's play a small game um, with LinkedIn sign up process and a feature. You would have created your LinkedIn account. What could be a given when then scenario for a user when they would like to go and implement it? So can somebody suggest how a given when then will be written for this?
You can put it on chat, so that's easy for
Yeah.
others to look at as well. Team.
So the scenario one is user successfully creates a LinkedIn account. So the fields are in front of you. The web form is in front of you. So I'm not able to read, but Sri, if you can.
Yeah, I don't mind reading that on chat, but as long as it comes through, maybe we want to give it a couple of minutes, Nishant, for people to
Sure.
think and put their comments.
Yeah.
Come on, folks, let's participate in this. Just put your version of BDD structure for the scenario 1. User successfully creates a LinkedIn account. Given when and then is something which is expected. So if you can put that, we can brainstorm on that. We've got the first one from Monica Nishant.
Thanks,
She
Monica.
says, given I am a registered LinkedIn user, when I log in, then I can see link to add new connection.
Nice. Yeah, thanks. That could be one of them.
Pankaj says login scenario is login to LinkedIn. Given I am a registered customer, when I enter my credentials and I log in, then I should be able to see the LinkedIn homepage.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. That could be one. Thank you. Yeah. So yeah, thanks Pankaj and Monica, and everybody. Certainly, it's a bit of task to type it, but that's fine. So, for example, this could be one of them. Given John is on the LinkedIn registration page, because what is given is this, right? That's the context. Context is all about where you are currently, what is provided to you, what is the different things around you which we have been told to you. For example, when you talk about okay, I need to go to London from Norwich, that means you need to have a bus service available or a train service available. Means these are the things which I'll tell you by default, right? Then when you enter all the required registration fields, here the required registration fields are these, and then LinkedIn account is created. So this is about towards a registration process. Now if we see another example, same into more detailed one. So obviously here we have seen a different flavors, but that's where 3-4 people will come together and they will debate on this feature, what exactly business is looking for, and that's where multiple scenarios can be created. Another one could be given when John is on the LinkedIn registration page, when he enters all the registration required registration information and he hits join now. So they are getting into more detail of it by providing more context, more actions, and articulating what at that point of time happen, what would be the outcome. Then his LinkedIn account is created, means they would like to validate the backend or a process as well, whether the account is created or not. And then he is directed to the profile creation page and his confirmation email is sent. So this is further to it, they would like to validate it end to end, right? So this is how further scenarios, again, it is having a different view, and that's where three amigos and tasks like that enables us to do so. Now let's thanks for participating in it, guys. Let's move to another concept. So this was all about PDD. We'll look into the TDD, which is test driven development. In the recent past, a lot of frameworks we have come which enables it by default. So if you go in a little past, talk about the model view controller MVC patterns, be it Java or .NET or any other practices, where you should be able to test each of these components of your code separately. If you are talking about your models, your views, they can be tested through your integration testing, your unit testing. You talk about UI, that can be tested through your Selenium based tested tests, spec flow, JBehave kind of tests. This is more towards making whatever you are doing a coding right now. Let's take an example of adding two numbers. And test driven development is more towards getting the requirement and from there creating your code further to it. So the actual coding will not start from that directly getting into the class file or writing that code right away. It starts from writing your tests first. Now if you are able to match it, let's go back to 10 years back when your unit testing was in a separate document, where first based on your high level design or a low level design, you will be going and creating a set of unit tests, that this is how it should work. And then a developer will go and pick that file, pick the requirement low level design, go through it and create that coding. And then manually it will be executed by looking at it whether it has passed or failed. Based on that, the bugs and other things will be picked up and fix it. This approach is more towards shift left. There is a code or a unit test is sitting right in the code, and your actual development will start first writing those test cases. So first you write those tests, check if the test fail. So first time when you will write, obviously it will fail because there is no supporting thing to help it. So we have taken an example of adding those two numbers. So I'll first write that test method, and there are frameworks available for it which enables you to do so. So you write that first time you don't pass anything, your test will fail. Then you write enough code, means you generate those classes which is going to add those two numbers, properties which is going to, that's where you will pass those numbers on, and then finally get the output. Now you are going to refactor further, basically write that code and make the test pass. So write the minimum code so that the test can pass. That means you have somebody now sitting in the code who can review it. Means you are managed to achieve the result that adding a two numbers, this is what my outcome is. So the thing, three steps are there. You first need to put a setup. Okay, so you need to first put a setup of your different methods. You need a class, you need a method, you need properties. All those things will be the basic setup which is needed, right? And then you will have to act on it. Means call that method or call that function to get that particular methods outside. And finally, the asserting whether you are able to achieve the result. So two things will be always available with you. What you would like to do and what should be the outcome, because that's what we get in the requirement. What thing we don't know is how to write that particular method to achieve that outcome. So this is where a minimum code will be written just to make that particular outcome achieved, and that's where the unit testing is coming into picture. So what you are doing, you are developing a unit piece of work here. You are not developing the whole thing on the go. Once it is created, then you look at the scope of refactoring further. And again, there is a you can get into the multiple time refactor and all. There is a limit how often you should be doing it, and based on the need, and always it's a evolving thing with agile. It's not a problem if you play a take depth removal stories, take refactoring stories. You should always keep those time within your sprint, which will help in evolving those architecture patterns. And check after refactoring, as you had somebody in your code sitting in the form of unit test to tell you, I have passed before. That means your functionality is working. Because of refactoring, you have broken me again. So go and fix that so that I can work and provide you the right result. So that particular third step or a second step will help you to go and try this in a cycle, so that as a developer you will be able to write that code, and slowly and gradually that class file will extend further and you can cover multiple unit tests. You can test those each one of these functionalities separately. With that, there are certain principle for writing those test cases, unit test cases, which lives with your code, and that's where the developer will be able to quickly validate whether he is able to meet those guidelines or not. So definition of done should also be articulating this in terms of whether developer has covered all the unit test cases or unit cases scenario. How he will be able to understand the different scenarios, it is from the PDD. So from there, they will be able to translate that into the unit test as well. But with unit test, there is a principle which you need to keep in mind called first principle. So this is about being fast. Your unit tests should run fast and really fast. It should be able to provide you the result within like seconds or minutes. If there is a code base of 30,000 lines, your unit test should still be running between the 2 to 3 minutes and should be able to get you the right result right away. Again, you need to see how quickly you can make it run and make it pass. That comes with being it isolated. It should have no dependency. We are talking about unit test. You are testing a piece of work, a unit of work, it should be isolated. There should not be any dependencies. And there are methods like mocking, stubbing, all those techniques can be used to make it isolated and create that kind of environment. That's where you can write the test. It should be repeatable. It should can always be like executed multiple times. You should not hard code certain values that after this date, basically example of that being your date based test, a date of birth. For example, if you are writing a date of birth and comparing a person age, always, if you are not putting it dynamic after a certain date, that start the test will start failing. So you should be writing it in a such a way that it can be repeated multiple times in a year, multiple times in a month, multiple times in a day. So it should be like that. It should be self-verifying. So basically it is all about your again the three tasks as I mentioned, your basically assemble, act, and assert. So you need to create that all these dependencies together. You need to have that act step in it where you should be performing the action, and finally able to assert the outcome in that particular test itself. It should not be just pass or fail. There should not be any extra investigation which should be needed. Now every code changes should result in a new test. It should write in a timely manner. It should not be done just to increase the coverage. There is a term called test coverage as well. What it provides you is, it provides you the number of actual lines of code which has been covered by your unit test. And trust me, as an anti pattern, people can cover any all the code and all the number of lines of code, but it should be a right test which should be doing it. So if you are a reviewer of those things, you should be making sure the test is covering the right business behavior, right business aspects. So this is all about the first principles in terms of how we achieve the right unit test cases, how we write it, how we make it long lasting, and also helping us with refactoring. So next time when I get into unit test, I'll see how much time it takes today. Have I involved any further complexity to it which has increased the total duration of the unit test cases? Those things need to be looked into. So next time when you are adding something else or new features on top of it, you have things as a unit test suite which is built into your code base, which is going to help you guide that journey and help you get you that confidence that yeah, your code looks all right, it is not breaking anything into the system. That is just one check. Again, it will get into environments where it will be further verified with BDD executions, then ATDD. You have multiple tests, your performance, your NFT tests, all those will run on top of that. But this is first layer where you and in your machines you will be able to get a quick feedback on the business value what you are creating in your machines. With all these ecosystem we have looked at different DevOps pipeline and the different automation techniques. Just to give you an engineering practice, what Netflix has launched, which is called the Simian Army. So Netflix came
Um,
up with, sorry,
Sorry, Nishant. Sorry. Before you get into the next Civilian army, there are a couple of questions that have come on
sure,
chat.
yeah,
In terms of first question is asked by Rahul, saying in what scenarios TDD is not recommended. That's the first question which we've got on chat. Do you want to answer that?
sure, Sri. Yeah, thanks. That's the right question. And again, like PDD, the frameworks which are available. So if you are talking about the web technologies, that's where the unit test is primarily recommended for sure. And there are techniques which are available out there which supports it. So wherever the technology like Java or jQuery, these days you have JUnit and all frameworks which are available there. Even you can write the unit test for your JavaScript and jQueries as well. So all the technology which is helping you in order to achieve the engineering practices, you should be implementing it. So if mainly, sorry, Yeah, so mainly into the web technologies or the mobile technologies, high level programming languages, those enables these kind of testing. So in that case, you should go and implement it. Whereas if you go into the legacy system like mainframe and all, there are no frameworks available, and it can still be achieved. You can write your custom tools and techniques. As a principle, it is more towards enabling something where you are creating a ecosystem which is not breaking it, the further addition or a code into it. So uh, we have worked on in past also in on developing some of the custom frameworks which are available there in some of the techniques. But as in principle, you need to understand from a term that what is TDD is all about. So TDD is all about these things. Are you able to achieve it, whether it be it through a tools or be it through a process? If you are able to define it, then you should go and implement it. But based on the experience we have seen, mainly in the high level programming language, which are more towards web front end or middle layer, you can implement it, but not on the legacy systems as such. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, Nishant, thank you very much. So just one question from the cost perspective or the type of project, if it's a short project or whatever, is there any changes in terms of whether we should be uh, writing
Yeah.
TDD or not?
Sure, Rahul. That's a really good question. So there is no excuse to it, whether it's a short term or long term. I remember there used to be a time where your unit test cases were added into your efforts, right? Which is not the case. Now it has become into the part of your regular development process. Whenever
Yeah,
any development has to happen, it has to be a test driven development, because this is a development technique. It's not about writing a unit test. And there was a part in it, right, timely, which I mentioned. It should not be written after your code development. It's a test driven development approach. What is driving your development is test. So there is no excuse for a small or a large project. It's a development practice which we need to follow into the current industry. Or if you have a DevOps practices, or you would like to achieve or go towards that, this is a first and chief most ask to do so.
great, Nishant. That answers my question. Yeah, thank you.
Sure, thanks, Rahul.
Second
Yeah.
question comes from Pankaj. Sorry,
uh,
just a quick one before you go on. Should we write BDD first or TDD first, or does it depend on the user story? Like, not every story can be converted to BDD. That's his question.
Yeah. So again, that's a nice question. So there are two bits to it, right? So whenever you see a requirement, when a development has to start, the first is obviously the build, which is with the developers. So you should always go with a TDD. First, you need to deliver that particular feature before you are able to map or validate it using a BDD feature. So first thing, to answer the quick and short, that is a test driven development should be first, and then BDD should come on top of that. BDD is more, it's bit different to TDD. TDD is more on a unit level. You are testing each one of these features like if you are building a calculator, you will be testing adding, subtracting, your division, multiplication, all these different aspects. BDD will just pass those things and see from a different aspect, edge cases, all those things. While TDD covers in unit level, BDD will more cover it from a feature and scenario perspectives. But first you need to deliver those values. That's where TDD first and BDD next. Hope that answers your question.
Okay, you can carry on. If there is anything that I'll let you know by the end of the session. We still have 13 minutes to go.
Sure, thanks. Yeah. So I was talking about the Netflix engineering practice, and this basically checks how much your infrastructure is ready, or the overall practices are ready, and how you quickly come out of it. So these are different monkeys or Kong or gorillas which are out there, which breaks your system on the fly, and it purposefully does that so that a team is able to fix them quickly and get rid of it. And this basically helps you to bring resiliency into your processes and overall pipelines what you are creating. So there are multiple things like you can it can break as a everything, and that is a basically uh, chaos gorilla. Then you will have a compliance, which is mainly about a compliant stuffs where you are able to meet it or not. It can break that. It can bring the latency, it can bring that customer experience and break that. So it does that on the fly, and then quickly it triggers that. So monitoring, and then the right team need to get involved and quickly resolve it. That's where these are some of the concept which basically you uses it and checks your resiliency of the overall infrastructure and processes. This concept is widely used into AWS game day, and if you can participate into that, that will provide you a whole good experience and how to experience these different concepts and how it breaks the system. So that is one of the practices what we follow. With that, we'll quickly move into the maturity model. So everywhere people talk about like how mature is your software engineering practices, right? There is a similar way we measure the agile maturity, right, in terms of various matrices, KPIs. uh, the similar way you can look at the maturity model. So ThoughtWorks basically came up, probably this is around 7 to 8 years old, but this is still is applicable into the companies which are still would like to go and try that out into their organization. So if you look at this, there are different level, right, from level -1 to level 3. These are the different techniques what you do into day-to-day sprinting. Basically you do a build management, your continuous integration, whether your environments deployments are there, how your release management and compliance is there, your testing, what kind of testing level you are implementing it, your data management, database issues, database rollback, database deployments, whether they are all part of pipeline or you are manually doing or somebody else external to your team is doing. So level 1 is on a lower side where the process is not repeatable, it's poorly controlled and reactive. Basically once the issue happens and then you go and correct it. Level 0 is you have received some of the repeatable documented process, but they are still partly automated, not fully automated. Level 1 is more towards consistency, so you have those processes around that particular life cycle. Then level 2 is towards process are measured, it's quantitatively you are able to see the benefit out of it, it can be controlled. And level 3 is the very advanced, that's where you have achieved it, now you are looking at the process improvement part of it. With that, I'll just put a quiz link, up a small view on how it looks like into the chat, and we can take a different view from you all, how you can fill this form. And then basically this forms tells you that level 1, level 0, level -1, 1, 2, 3, all these different areas where wherever you are working, what you feel is applicable. So for example, if your build and management and continuous integration, your processes are not repeatable, it's poorly controlled, reactive, you can select these options based on whatever is applicable. So can you please quickly fill it, and then we can monitor how the responses are. Please shout if you have any doubt or questions.
Hope you all are filling your survey, the maturity survey. I'm done with mine.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'll refresh this now. Cool.
Good responses.
So we are looking towards more on this side. So this is level 3 on this side, and this is where on the level 0 and more side. So it's glad to see that we have a mixed result and more towards this side. But we would like to move towards more on the blue side, right? So on higher level, and that's what we will look at onto the next slide. So thank you for filling this up. You look at these different techniques. So if you look at level 0, each one of these articulates it how it should be done into that area, right? So you're testing level 1, you have build and management talks about the manual process of building software. All are manual, so manual testing for development. So if you are at this level, slowly you need to implement certain techniques to move into level 0, or you can directly implement drastically something to go into level 1. So there are level 1 objectives which you need to achieve in terms of getting that value achieved in terms of being consistent. So this is a maturity model which has been projected by the ThoughtWorks, and you can go and have a read about it, go and try to implement into your organizations, and that will certainly help. Now, as a summary, what we have seen overall, TDD is more towards agile team. You deliver the business value. TDD is more done in a cycle way. You keep on writing the test, make it fail, refactor, again add further test to it. BDD is more towards a different environments. You again run that within a sprint and put a feedback loop in there. You go through the different processes. Finally, at the end, when it is delivered, you put a continuous monitoring, and continuous monitoring is across all these stages to pass it on to a team. At the lower level, you more focus on a test driven development, code quality, your agile teams. The design aspect and the architectural patterns are also keep evolved with your teams by following certain practices. So obviously by your architecture board, they will be putting a intentional architecture out there. With your small works, you are going to achieve that in your sprint by continuously following certain standards and software engineering practices. And obviously at the lean UX level, you are going to amplify that customer experience and by automating those UI tests. So this is how it all fits well as a part of the whole pipeline and the processes. Lot of things can be automated. This was just an introduction to your software engineering practices and what it can achieve, and this is how it all fits well. Certain reading recommendations which is out there, the Phoenix project, if not you have read about it, please go and read about this, where Gene Kim is talking about their practices. Then you have DevOps handbook, the Unicorn project, which has been recently released again by the same author of the Phoenix project. It's a nice book. And finally, the clean code. This is more towards understanding how a software engineering should be implemented, or the code should be written in terms of achieve those engineering practices. With that, I'll open it for question and answer. And thank you to APGI for having me here. You can connect me on LinkedIn and Twitter. Thank you.
Cheers, Nishant. Thank you very much for the session. Team, any questions to Nishant? Anybody?
No, I think the session was wonderful. I think I will wait for recording as well, and then again we'll ping Nishant if I have any questions. I need to go through again, but I think very overall, very nicely covered. So many concepts and in detail. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Just before, of course, we can still stay back for questions. Just before I let you guys go, Nishant, if that's okay, if I can stop sharing your screen.
Sure. Thanks, Sri.
Yeah, just a quick check on the next session that's coming up, everybody. If you see the APGI's release backlog, the is on the 29th. The one which we had today, it's done, Agile Software Engineering by Nishant. And we have Agile Estimations that's coming up on the 29th. You have the registration link down below or you just go to UVCity and you can see Agile estimations there. Click on that register so that you get your invite link for 29th session. And of course, these recordings will go on UVCity, for which, when I say UVCity, it's also on UVCity and YouTube as well. For you to access the recording on UVCity, and in general, I would request you to go ahead and review, give a feedback on the tool itself for the course. That ensures when we do some retrospective for ourselves, and bring some quality sessions in future for you. So if you can review the course or the session today, it would be of a great help for Nishant and for APGI to inspect and adapt. And there are many more sessions that are coming up. You can please check on UVCity. First of all, in fact, I wanted to mention this at the beginning of the session. I'd like to thank UVCity for providing us the web hosting platform for the last 6-7 months now, and without which these sessions wouldn't have been possible. So thank you, UVCity, for really collaborating with APGI in all these virtual series. Any more last minute questions before we let you go? Anybody? No? I think we are on the dot, 90 minutes from the start of the session. Thank you all for joining in. Again, thanks for your time Sunday evening. Have a nice rest of the evening ahead, and stay safe, everybody. Cheers all.
Thank you.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.